I am doing my reading practice from the book Effective Public Speaking by Dale Carnegie. And here I am. Is there the faintest shadow of a reason why you should not be able to think as well in perpendicular position before an audience as you can when sitting down? Surely you know there is not. In fact, you ought to think better when facing a group. Their presence ought to steer you and lift you. A great many speakers will tell you that the presence of an audience is a stimulus, an inspiration that drives their brains to function more clearly, more keenly. At such times, thoughts, facts, ideas that they did not know they possessed drift smoking by, as Henry Ward Beecher said, and they have but to reach out and lay their hands hot upon them. They ought to be your experience. It probably will be if you practice and preserve of this much. However, you may be absolutely sure training and practice will wear away your audience fright and give you self confidence and an abiding courage. Do not imagine that your case is unusually difficult. Even those who afterward became the most eloquent representatives of their generation were, at the outset of their careers, afflicted by this blinding fear and self consciousness. Mark Twain, the first time he stood up to lecture, felt as if his mouth were filled with cotton and his pulse were speeding for some prized cup. The late Jean Georges, the most powerful political speaker that France produced during his generation, sat for a year tongue tied in the Chamber of Deputies before he could summon up the courage to make his initial speech. John Bright, the illustrious Englishman who, during the Civil War, defended in England the cause of union and emancipation, made his maiden speech before a group of country folk gathered in a school building. He was so frightened on the way to the place, so fearful that he would fail, that he implored his companion to start applause to bolster him up whenever he showed signs of giving way to his nervousness. Charles Stewart Parnell, the great Irish leader, at the outset of his speaking career was so nervous, according to the testimony of his brother, that he frequently clenched his fist until his nails sank into his flesh and his palms bled. Disraeli admitted that he would rather have led a cavalry charge than to have faced the House of Commons for the first time. His opening speech there was a ghastly failure. In fact, so many of the famous speakers of England have made poor showings at first. Then there is now a feeling in Parliament that it is rather an inauspicious omen for a young man's initial task to be a decided success, so take heart. After watching the careers and aiding somewhat in the development of so many speakers, the author is always glad when a student has at the outset a certain amount of flutter and nervous agitation. There is a certain responsibility in making a talk, even if it is to only 2 dozen men or women. In a business meeting, a certain strain, a certain shock, a certain excitement. The speaker ought to be keyed up like a thoroughbred straining at the bit. The immortal Cicero said 2000 years ago that all public speaking of real merit was characterized by nervousness. Speakers often experience this same feeling even when they are talking over the radio. Microphone fright It is cold. When Charlie Chaplin went to the air, he had his speech all written out. Surely he was used to audiences. He toured this country back in 1912 with a vaudeville sketch entitled A Night in a Music Hall. Before that, he was on the legitimate stage in England. Yet, when he went into the padded room and faced the microphone, he had a feeling in the stomach, not unlike the sensation one gets when he crosses the Atlantic during a stormy February. Thank you. That's it for the day.